Hi, and welcome to this edition of Bowie News and Views. I'm Joe Puhala, the producer and co-host today. Bert Oliver is on assignment, and we have today a really interesting, unique, and exciting show. I want to introduce our guest, Mr. Bill Atkins. Bill is the man who knew John Wayne, and we have a two-part show today. The first will actually be a show that Bill can tell you about, that he actually was part of a movie. Tell us about that. We'll see it, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Well, when I was a 19-year-old Marine stationed at Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, California, getting ready to go overseas, they came in 2 days before, and they were going to do a movie on the base at an old abandoned airstrip. The movie was all about Guadalcanal, 1942, at an airfield in Guadalcanal, Henderson Field. I was a Marine sergeant at the time, and I was selected to be in charge of 14 other men, and we were in the movie, we were the Mud Marines. And I have a partner, Jake Thorne, who looks exactly like John Wayne, and you'll see him introduce the DVD. And he was the chief cameraman at the Senate office building in Washington. And he made this DVD. It's like a documentary about how I got involved in the movie and all about the making of the movie.
Sounds so interesting. That's a perfect time to break and segue. Let's take a look at that documentary now.
Okay.
Howdy, folks. I'm Jake Thorne. I never got to meet the Duke, but I want to tell you about somebody who did. His name is Bill Atkins. And back in 1950, Bill Atkins appeared in the movie Flying Leathernecks with John Wayne. This is a story that I know you want to hear, so take a look and find out about the man who knew John Wayne.
Yeah, what we have here is, I have a miniature museum here for John Wayne. I have some pictures here of John doing some of his career, different movies he was in, Searchers and cowboy movies. And this pair of fatigues here actually belonged to a major who was on Guadalcanal during World War II. That's a picture of him right here. So this is the beginning, I hope, of a miniature museum for John Wayne. I'd like to show you some pictures I have in the other room, lobby cards and promotional things that were done, sent out to the theaters for promoting the movie Flying Leathernecks. What we have here is some of the publicity lobby cards that they use promoting the movie Flying Leathernecks. In fact, we even have one here that's from Mexico. It's in Spanish, and that happens to be me on the plane fighting the fire during one of the scenes, and here are some of the other action scenes from the movie. If you'll come with me, I will sit down and tell you the story.
Tell us the story. How'd you get involved?
Well, in 1950, I had already been in the Marine Corps for 2 years. The Korean War started in June of 1950. On August the 31st of 1950, we were put on a troop train out of Fort McHenry, Baltimore, Maryland. It took us 15 days to get to Camp Pendleton. The reason it took 15 days, they were shipping a lot of equipment out to the West Coast to go to Korea. And we arrived in Camp Pendleton on September the 15th, 1950. Our outfit was the 11th Engineer Battalion, Combat Engineers. We were disbanded, and we were all placed in Training Replacement Command. and every day they would come into the barracks and call out 10, 20 names and ship people different places. Some of them went to Korea. Our outfit was a battalion of over 600 men, and about 100 of them ended up in Korea, and 15 of them were killed in action. It got down to where there were only 12, 14 men left in the barracks. One day, Captain Bryant came in from headquarters and wanted to know who the highest ranking non-com was in the barracks. It happened to be me. So we jumped in the Jeep, we went up to headquarters, and he informed me that they were filming a movie on the base at an old abandoned airstrip. They were filming a movie. It was going to be called Flying Leatherneck, John Wayne and Robert Ryan. And he told me we were, until further notice, we were going to be assigned to that movie 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We had no other duties during that time. And so the next morning we had to be out at 7 o'clock in the morning. They took us over to where they had already brought in Japanese tanks, palm trees, and the whole movie was taking place on Guadalcanal in 1942 at an airstrip called Henderson Field. And that's how we got involved with this movie.
How did you feel when you found out that you were going to be in a movie with John Wayne, or what did you think about this happening to you?
Oh, we were very excited. The first day we went back to the PX and we all bought cameras. And for the first 3 or 4 days after that, all day long we were snapping pictures of John Wayne. Then, like anything else, it wears off after a while, and after the first week or so, I probably only took a couple pictures after that, but I did take quite a few during the first week that we were on the set.
So what did you look like in 1950?
This is a picture of me in dress blues right here. And this is a picture taken on the set. In the movie, we were the Mud Marines, and we weren't allowed to, we had to wear the same fatigues every day, and we were not allowed to shave during the whole time we were on the set.
So didn't you get in trouble with the Marine Corps by not shaving there?
Yeah, in fact, when you're in the Marine Corps, if you get out the main gate, you get inspected. We had to carry these little cards indicating that we were assigned to RKO for the duration of the filming of the movie Flying Leatherneck. That's the only way we could get off the base without being clean shaven.
Well, that was a kind of a blessing.
Yes.
Now, what about the Mud Marines? Who were the Mud Marines?
The Mud Marines were, like I said, we were the last 12 people left that hadn't been shipped out. Every day they would come in, ship people to different bases, Bremerton, Washington, Naval Yard, different places. Some of them went to Korea. And when it got down to, we were the last 12, and that's how we got caught up in. The Marine Corps was willing to furnish the studio with anything they wanted as far as extras, equipment, or anything to that effect.
What's that other picture there beneath?
The other picture is a picture taken on the set, and you can see the palm trees and some of the actors that were playing the roles of pilots in the movie. This is a Japanese tank, and this here is a pagoda they built to, like the one they actually had on Henderson Field in Guadalcanal in 1942. And again, this one is just a scene with J.C. Flippin, one of the character actors in the movie, taking on the set. And here he is on another picture where sitting in front of a large hangar. On days when it wasn't enough light out, they would go inside the hangar and do scenes, indoor scenes inside the hangar.
And what was J.C. like?
J.C. was a real nice guy. He was a comedian and very approachable, and he was a very, very nice guy.
Okay, what's that?
This is a picture, the first scene where this is a picture of the plane coming in. After the plane comes in, they had a Marine pilot. They took out the seat. John Wayne, and he sat in the back, and John Wayne sat on his lap, and taxied the plane up and stopped, and J.C. Flippin came out to greet him. And of course the pilot was sitting in the back, you couldn't see him.
Did it surprise you when?
Well, that was the first time I laid eyes on John Wayne. That was the first scene they shot in the movie, and that was the first time I saw him.
What'd you think when you saw him?
Thought, man, he looked just like, he's a big guy. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he's as big as he is as big as he looked in the movies.
Do you remember seeing him when you were a kid?
Yeah, I saw him as a child, but of course he was always in a cowboy movie. This is the first time I'd seen him in the military. Although 1949 he did a movie called Sands of Iwo Jima, and I was in the Marine Band, and we played at the premiere of the movie at the Hippodrome Theater in Baltimore, Maryland, 1949, when they premiered the movie in Baltimore at the Hippodrome in 1949.
Did you have any idea you were going to be in a movie?
I had no idea that I'd ever meet this guy a year later. That's the way it goes.
What's that picture there?
This picture here is a action scene from the movie. We hear planes coming in. We don't know what, we think they're Japanese, and one of the planes dips his wing so that you can see the star, and when he dipped his wing, we knew it was our plane. We all threw our helmets off and started cheering, and there I am right here, right above the barrel. I've already taken my helmet and thrown it in the air. We're cheering because we find out it's airplanes, not the enemy.
How about the next picture?
This is also the same scene with the air raid with John Wayne, and the other stars are all scrambling for cover, going beneath the pagoda where the sign says, "Through these portals pass the fastest Marines in the world." And this is another scene of them showing under the shelter during the raid bombing from the Japanese planes. This scene here is during an air raid also, and you have John Wayne, you have one of the other actors here, and you have Robert Ryan, and on the ground here you can see that that's me on the ground there. This is another scene where the plane is burning, and again that's me down here, kneeling down right here. We're fighting the fire on the plane, which is on fire.
Did it surprise you to see yourself in that lobby card?
Yeah, I had no idea. I got these lobby cards off eBay, and it took me 50 years to acquire them, because when the movie was made, and I'd go to a movie and ask them for the cards, they say, "No, we can't give you those. They go back to the studio. We can't give them to you." It took me 50 years to acquire these. Now this is a picture of the PBY, which they brought in the movie to take out the wounded, and this is a picture of the mock-up they built, which they were going to burn during an air raid. And in this scene, when the PBY comes in, we're told to cheer the arrival of the PBY to take out the wounded. In this scene, I have a pith helmet on, because in this scene I'm a CB instead of a Marine. We had one scene in the movie that we did on a Sunday, and it was the scenario was the Japanese were bombing. One of the bombs left a large crater. It was also raining. They put up towers and ran water pipes across, so when they were ready to shoot the scene, they would turn the water on. And this movie required John Wayne to run and do a backflip into one of these craters, which was full of mud and water. And John did the scene, and he did it in one take. He ran, he did a backflip into the mud and the water, and when they hollered cut, he got up and started brushing off the mud and said, damn, he said, I earned my $30,000 today. In this scene there, where the PBY gets bombed and burning, we have a scene where they put gas lines through the mock-up, turned the gas on, threw a match on it, and set it on fire, and then we go in to put out the fire. That's me on the wing of the plane with a fire extinguisher fighting the fire. This is a picture taken on the set. Again, I'm sitting here next to the machine gun, 50 caliber machine gun. On this picture, we're sitting in front of a large hangar where they did the indoor scenes, and the director, Nick Ray, John Wayne, and another unidentified, I believe he was one of the writers. We have two pictures here of them sitting in front of the hangar. Again, we had a lot of downtime where the camera were where they were getting set up for the next scene, and that was during some of the downtime.
What about Nick Ray? What was he like?
Nick Ray, he was a great guy. I dealt with Nick Ray personally because I was in charge of the 12 men, but even more so, I dealt with an assistant director, Sammy Ruman, who would relay. Nick Ray would meet with us, explain the scenes, what they needed us to do and everything. He was just an all-around nice guy. And later on, his biggest movie that he was ever involved in was he was the director for the movie Rebel Without a Cause. That was the highlight of his career as a director. Again, this is inside the hangar where they're doing, it was a cloudy day, so they were shooting some scenes. They set up a tent inside the hangar, and they were doing here's a close-up with John Wayne.
We lost Castle today. Schedule another mission. 1500. Same target. Roger.
On the set, they have a script girl who, anytime anybody flubs their line, she hollers cut. And John would flub his lines quite often. And this picture I took was he had flubbed his lines about 3 times in a row, and she came over and she was explaining to him what he said wrong. And when she was through, he turned around and said, "God darn, I'm going to go back to doing horse operas," he said. "That way I don't have to remember any lines." That was quite funny the way he said it. Here again we have John Wayne mingling with some of the character actors. This is one of our Marines here, but the other 3 people here are all character actors who have been involved quite a bit in some of his other movies. You'll see them in some of his other movies. This gentleman here is a guy named Michael Devereaux. He was one of the pilots in the movie, and he's also the one who gave me a copy of the script, the daily script. Each day, each morning, this script is dated 11/22/1950, and each morning they would come out with a revised script, which they'd worked on the night before, and they would pass them out to all the actors. We could not have speaking parts. The Marines couldn't because we weren't members of the Union. And so they would come out with the script every morning. These guys would kind of memorize what they would set up to explain the scene and everything, and they were supposed to return the script back to the writers at the end of that day, but I got Michael Devereaux as a souvenir to give me a copy of the script for that particular day. That's Michael Devereaux there.
Major, does a good pilot get so scared he breaks out in a sweat on a mission? His mouth gets so dry he can't...
Every one of them.
You?
The second I push that throttle forward. And anytime you meet a guy who says he doesn't, avoid him. He's an idiot. See ya, Ernie.
You got yourself a wingman, Major. Thanks.
This scene is one of the battle scenes. Later on in the movie, they did some battle scenes where it required a couple of hundred men. They brought in tanks and all kinds of equipment with a couple of hundred men, which, of course, we weren't involved in that part of the movie. This is the best scene that I had in the movie. It was a close-up with me being in the center here, where we hear planes overhead. We're in the jungle, and one of the actors says to the other, "Is it one of ours?" as he looks up to the sky. And they zoomed in and did a beautiful close-up, but unfortunately it ended up on the cutting room floor. This picture here is another picture of one of the battle scenes in the movie. And here we have a picture of John Wayne taking a break, having a smoke, talking to some of the people on the set. And this picture here was taken by the studio. I'm in the center here with John Wayne and another Marine over to the right. The purpose of this picture, the studio took a picture of each one of us 12 Marines that were involved in this to send back home to your home newspaper as a publicity thing. And here again we have John Wayne on the set, relaxing, always a cigarette in his hand, just relaxing, taking it easy on the set, waiting for the next scene. Now, here's an interesting picture. You see a small tent here, a mess hall tent here, and a very large one here. The large one was about 3 times the size of the small one. The mess hall, the small one, was for the Marines for feeding us. It was a mess hall. The large one was for the studio people, the actors, and of course it was in a restricted area, and the only people that could get in this restricted area if you weren't involved in the movie was a colonel, a major, or a general who would come down every day bringing their wives because they wanted to meet the Duke. Well, the funny part about it is about half the time he wouldn't eat there. He came over to our mess hall and he said, "No, I want to eat with the guys." So that was kind of funny. Also, now this picture here is John Wayne and myself taken again during one of the down times when we were just standing around doing nothing. And that's blown up from a very small snapshot that I had taken with him. Now this is a picture with me and 4 other guys. I'm to the right of, this is Robert Ryan in the center, and that's me to the right, and that's 3 of the other guys with it. This picture here is John Mitchum, Robert Mitchum's brother, who was one of the pilots in the movie, along with myself there, and that, again, we're on the set of the movie. And I have a picture here of a movie star. Her name is Gloria Graham. She was not involved in the movie, but her husband was Nicholas Ray, and she came down on a visit several times to visit her husband. Here I have a picture of Sammy Ruman. He was an assistant director that I dealt with most of the time. In fact, he even insisted, and we were not supposed to be paid for this movie, but he gave me at the end of every day, he gave me enough money, $5 for each man, which I distributed to each guy, which we weren't supposed to get, but he said, "No, you guys working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, I want you to have it." And he gave us $5 a day. So here I have a letter. After I got out of the Marine Corps, about a year later, I wrote a letter to Nick Ray asking whether or not me and a couple of my buddies could get jobs as extras in Hollywood. And this is the letter that I got back from him stating that it was overcrowded. and it was a union deal, and they were making fewer pictures than ever at that particular time. And so he says, as you requested, I'm enclosing the picture you sent to me. It sounds a little bit silly to be discouraging and congratulate you upon becoming a civilian again, but that's the way it is, and I would be doing you a disservice were I to tell you otherwise. Signed, Nick Ray.
What are some of your other impressions about John Wayne?
The John Wayne was the only person that I ever met that when he walked up, it was electrifying. Everybody stopped. I don't know what it was. It was something about his personality, that he was exactly in person. The way you see him, that's what you get. He was heavily involved in the making of the movie, even though he wasn't a director. He was constantly out there, giving directions to people. Get out of the way, watch out. We had one scene where they were doing explosion, and a guy walked in front of the camera, and he went out there screaming, and get the hell out of there. He said, we're doing a movie here. He was always smoking, and he never had his own. And we had a little tent there where guys would sit around during the downtime playing cards. So he came in looking for a smoke, and nobody had one. And I said, Duke, I've got a pack of Cools here. And he stopped and said, Sarge, you know what you can do with those Cools, don't you? And he went on to somebody else. But he was always, who's got a smoke? Who's got a smoke? And as you'll see in these pictures, almost every picture we have of him, he's got a cigarette.
What about makeup and what about his
makeup?
Hair too.
Before they do any close-up scenes, they come in around. They were putting pancake makeup on you. The Duke had a small hair piece that he had a personal valet that drove the car, was always within 10 feet of him. And before they do any real close-up scene, they had this little small patch they would put up on his front part of his forehead. It was very small, but for a close-up scene, they would always stop and put that on.
Interesting. Did you get makeup?
Yeah. Whenever there was a close-up scene, they had a spray bottle of pancake makeup in a spray bottle. And if the one scene that I had here where I had a real close-up, we had a makeup man there at all times. Also, they put the makeup on, I believe, to stop the glare from the sun shining and the glare.
What do you think about the entire experience, and have you seen the movie? What do you think about it now as you look back?
Yeah, I have seen the movie several times, and it brings back a lot of memories. It actually seems like yesterday when I watch it, because all through the movie, every scene, I was there when they actually did it. And, I was standing back 15, 20 feet. But it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Actually, being in this movie saved me from going to Korea, because at that time, if you had less than a year to go on your enlistment, they did not send you to Korea. Because being involved in the movie for over a month, when that was over, I only had 11 months to go. And because of that, I did not go to Korea. I ended up going back to Parris Island, South Carolina, and I spent my last 11 months in the Marine Corps at Parris Island, South Carolina.
You said before that some of the guys in your battalion died.
The 11th Engineer Battalion, which was disbanded when we got to Pendleton, out of the battalion, about 100 of them ended up in Korea, and we lost 15 killed in action in Korea out of our 11th Engineer Battalion.
So in some ways you might say that doing this movie might have saved you.
Oh, no doubt about it, because one of my closest friends who was shipped out the day before we started this movie, he ended up being wounded in Korea. I mean, if it would have been another day or two later, I would have ended up going to Korea.
Is there anything else you want to say about John Wayne or the whole experience, or how much this affected your life?
Well, it really was, like I said earlier, it was a chance of a lifetime. I didn't realize it back then how I always thought over the years it was no big deal, but the more the years go by, I realize it was a big deal. How many people can say that they ever met, not only met, but actually was around John Wayne for 5 or 6 weeks, 7 days a week? So the older I get, the more I realize it was a big deal.
Better get yourselves quartered. Then come back and we'll see what we can salvage out of this mess.
There's no report on Simmons from ground intelligence. I guess he's gone.
I guess so.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you get a chance to meet Bill Atkins someday at his John Wayne Museum in Bowie, Maryland. Until then, we'll see you. Let's go. Come on.
Wow, that was really exciting, interesting. But let me begin by saying, what was the experience like for you to be able to actually be on the set and be a part of that with John Wayne for so many days?
Well, at the time I was 19 years old and I didn't realize what a big deal it was. I did later in years, but at the time we were impressed because the first day we were on the show, we went out to the PX, bought cameras and snapped pictures all day. And it was exciting, but like anything else, after a while, when you're around the guy 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you know, it wears off a little bit. But he was the most amazing individual that I have ever met. It's been 60 years ago, but I still, he had a magnetism about him that I can't explain.
Was he standoffish or down to earth?
No, he would talk, usually when they do a movie on location, they normally bring in a big luxury trailer, and the star retreats to the trailer while they're setting up. He didn't have a trailer. He hung out with the guys, and during the downtime, we played touch football. We played poker. He ate with the enlisted guys. I mean, He was the most down. He'd talk to anybody, anytime, about anything. He had no airs about him whatsoever.
Now, what have people said as years go by and they learn you had that experience, especially people who are John Wayne fans?
Well, the ones that are John Wayne fans are really mesmerized by it. And if they're really John Wayne fans, I give them a John Wayne dollar, and which I just gave you there. And when I give them a John Wayne dollar, you think I gave them a $100 bill, because they can't believe it. A dollar bill with John Wayne's face on it.
Amazing, very interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit. What led you then to establishing the John Wayne Museum, and just tell me about that experience as well.
Well, for 50 years after the movie was done, I still wasn't aware of what a big deal it was. And 8 years ago, I met with Jake Thorne. He's the gentleman you saw introduce the movie, and he's a John Wayne look-alike, and he's the same size. He looks like him, he talks like him, he walks like him. And he was thrilled to meet somebody that actually knew John Wayne. So he was the one who made me aware that it was a big deal. And he encouraged me to bring in to my commercial real estate office some of the pictures I had. And it started out small and it mushroomed. Now I've got probably hundreds of artifacts and memorabilia. Everything in my museum is John Wayne, nobody else, John Wayne.
Now, can people come by actually and come in and see what you
Yes.
have? How's that done?
Well, I'm there probably 30, 40 hours a week. There are times when I'm not there, but there is a number on the window with the, if I'm not there, I'm usually 5 or 10 minutes away. They call me, I'll come back. Or they call me and let me know when they're coming by, and I meet them there.
And it's right on, it's Hilltop Plaza, correct?
Hilltop Plaza, right at the rear of the 7-Eleven store. I have 2 parking spaces. I have signs all over it.
Okay.
You can't miss it if you ride by it. You won't miss it.
Now, how much time have you actually spent to really put it together and get it where it's the beautiful thing it is now?
Well, I actually started on it, like I said, about 8 years ago, and slowly over the years I was able to get from eBay a lot of the lobby cards that they used to put out in front of the movie house. And when the movie was done and I would go to a movie and ask the manager, could I have those lobby cards? He said, no, they go back to the studio. And it took me 50 years, and on eBay, I got a lot of the lobby cards that were pertaining to the movie Flying Leathernecks.
Now, how long did it, let's go back to Flying Leathernecks for a second. How long did it actually take to film that movie?
The movie, we filmed it in about the middle of October through the end of November. And then they go back to Hollywood and they do a lot of editing. And the movie was done October, November 1950. And the movie actually came out in 1951. Because they do scenes, they take actual battle scenes, incorporate them into the movie, and that takes months to do that. So early 51, the movie came out and was released.
It was a lot of activity, right? I mean, just in watching the documentary, you were involved in the putting out fires, doing those things, so you were on the go in the movie.
Yeah, we were the Mud Marines, and we were doing a lot of different things. And the other thing about it is when they shoot a movie, they shoot about 2 hours, and then they edit it, and the actual movie may be an hour and 15 minutes. So a lot of the good scenes that I had ended up on the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. And because we were military, we couldn't have speaking parts because you have to be a union member, so we couldn't have speaking parts in the movie.
Now, how many of your Marines were actually in the movie?
14. 14, there were 14, and I was in charge of the group of 14.
So that in itself, I mean, even apart from John Wayne, to have that experience and for 12 hours a day, to be in a position of responsibility and making sure everything went well, that was important.
Nicholas Ray, the director who later on directed Rebel Without a Cause, was the director, and every morning, early in the morning, we met with the director and the assistant directors and everybody, and they explained what they were going to try to accomplish today, and then they would tell me what they wanted. And we actually did some rehearsing, like when they had battle scenes and explosions going off. You have to rehearse it so that you're not next to the explosion when it goes off. And the scene about the plane burning is they flew an actual plane in, and then they built a mock-up to look exactly like the plane, and then the Japanese were bombing, and they ran gas lines through the plane, and when they were ready to shoot the scene, they turned the gas on, threw a match on it, and then we had to go in and fight the fire. But even that was rehearsed because they had to teach us how to use the fire extinguishers, and it looked dangerous, but it really wasn't, because
it did. It looked when I watched it, it looked like you were in harm's way, but I guess you were not.
Well, they had a guy there with a valve, and he could shut the valve and instantly cut the flame off. So that, well, like I say, we had to rehearse it a couple times before they shot it.
Now, have you watched most of John Wayne's movies?
Oh, yeah, I have probably 150 or so of John Wayne, most all of them. And about once a week or so. At home, I'll watch one, if there's one I haven't seen for many years, I may go back and look at it. Yeah, I'm still a big John Wayne.
So I guess you could consider yourself a John Wayne historian as well.
Somewhat, yes, I think you could, because the difference between my museum and other museums, mine is a living museum. Normally when you go to a museum, you're talking about somebody that lived 200 years ago. There's nobody there that ever knew the person. But when you come to my John Wayne Museum, you're talking to a guy who spent 6 weeks, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day with John Wayne. So I really got to know the man. So I call it a living museum, because you're interacting with somebody that actually knew the person that you're honoring.
That's a unique twist, because not only are the people who come able to look, to see what you have there, the artifacts, everything you've been able to collect, but they're able to talk to you and gain some insight into John Wayne himself.
And the most asked question is always, what kind of guy was he? And they're always thrilled to hear when I tell him what a great guy he was. Everybody wants to know the first question they had, what kind of guy was he?
That is, and it's in a way, because it's in a way surprising. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So often you hear of people who are stars in any aspect. They become removed, a bit arrogant, but your experience with him, nothing like that. I mean, he did his job, and he did it extremely well, but off the set, he was one of the guys.
In the DVD that you just saw, I talk about they had a small tent set up for me and my 14 guys. It was a mess hall tent where they fed it, and next to it they had a huge, like a circus tent, set up for the studio people. It was in a restricted area, and the only people who could get in that area were people that had something to do with the movie, unless you were a general, a colonel, a captain.
Rank has its privilege, right?
Right, and they would come down every day at lunchtime and bring their wives, daughters, girlfriend to meet the Duke and have lunch with him. But about half the time when they came down, they'd say, "Where's the Duke? Where? Oh, he's over eating with the guys." They wasn't about to come over there.
Right. That says something right there, where, you know, he not only thought enough of the service you were giving, what you were doing, but he took the time to actually be there, and I'm sure that you had great conversations with them.
Yeah, we did. And when you're filming a movie, there's a lot of downtime. They shoot a scene, and it might take them an hour to get the next scene up. And under normal conditions, the star retreats to the trailer. He didn't retreat. He hung out with the some of the extra Hollywood that he was friendly with, and the Marines and stuff. And he was just one of the guys. That's all. He was, you know, like I said, anybody could approach him and ask him any kind of question you want, or he'd carry on. I had many one-on-one conversations with him during the 6 weeks, so I really felt like I got to know, and I really admired the man. I think it was really a great American.
And his popularity, I mean, is such that that's true. I mean, he is revered by many people.
Well, he's been dead 33 years, and every year when they take a poll of movie stars, he's still in the top 10 every year, even though he's been deceased for 33 years. And that's, in other words, they have, in California courts, they have John Wayne Airport. Mm-hmm. They don't have a Frank Sinatra Airport.
Right, no they don't.
They don't have an Elvis Presley Airport. But
I've flown into Wayne,
right.
And I'm sure you have too.
I have, because they have a 12-foot bronze statuette of John Wayne at the airport. Mm-hmm. I went there and took pictures.
Tremendous likeness.
Oh, actually, beautiful, yes.
You know what? It really seems so right that it happened. I mean, for almost 50 years to go by, and the time, you know, where nothing, you realize the beautiful experience you had to be on that set, but now to be able to bring that alive again, not only memories for yourself and others, but to make it available to people, that must give you some real gratification.
Well, back over the years, if I said to somebody that, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was in a movie, and most people would just yawn and say, yeah. Because a lot of servicemen were in movies where they had thousands and hundreds. But in my case, I was right up front with him for 6 weeks, 7 days a week.
Yeah, and our viewers who saw that documentary can see that. You were right there, right in the action.
Well, I give all the credit to the documentary to Jake Thorne, because he gave me the ammunition to show that I really was in a movie with John Wayne, not just a crowd scene.
Exactly, and actually, you were, I don't know if you technically call it, but you were actually an actor in the movie. No speech, no voice, couldn't speak. But what you did, those are parts often reserved for actors.
Right, and Jake is also the one who, after we did the DVD, he came back later and filmed the part, the introduction and the ending with him on horseback. We did that in Lone Pine, California. Lone Pine is an old western town in California where for 85 years they've filmed most of the westerns there. John Wayne filmed 17 movies there, Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, and every year in October they have a film festival, and Jake Thorne and I go out and do a show out there every year in Lone Pine. And he's the one I have to give all the credit to, because he made the DVD and he made me aware of that it was a big deal.
Oh, it is. I mean, I was unaware till, became aware that we were going to do this show. And I got to tell you, Bill, I'm impressed. And not only did you know John Wayne, but you had a part in the movie, and now you've been able to put together the museum. And I love your comment that it's a living museum, because not only is it everything that's in it, it's you, and you're a person who can actually bring him alive to the people who visit there.
Right, that's why I call it a living museum, as opposed to most museums are about something that happened 200 years ago, and there's nobody there to witness it.
Right, that gives it a unique touch, and I'm sure there are no other of the John Wayne museums that have that special feature.
There are only about 5 John Wayne museums in the whole country. This is the only one on the East Coast. And they had an auction 2 years ago. John Wayne family had a warehouse full of his personal belongings, and they finally agreed to sell it off. They had an auction in L.A., and Jake and I went there it was a 2-day auction, and there were probably 5,000 or 6,000 people went through it, and they were people from all over we met people from Germany, from Ireland, all different guys. And I said, "Oh, you on vacation?" They said, "No, we're here to buy." They thought they would raise about $2 million. They actually raised $5.4 million for the John Wayne cancer program. And they had estimated values on everything, and there was a beautiful portrait of John Wayne, and it had an estimated value of $385. And I figured out that one I'm going to buy. Well, I didn't buy it because it sold for $13,000.
Oh, my.
His green beret sold for $179,000. His driver's license sold for $89,000. And then there was an article in a national magazine about it with all the items that sold, what they sold for. And of all the people going through there, they only interviewed one person, me. I was the only one they interviewed.
Were you able to get anything there? I guess not, because the prices were so high.
The prices, they had estimated values, and the actual sale prices were probably 40 or 50% higher than they estimated. Because like I said, originally they thought they might get $2 million, and they ended up getting $5.4 million.
That's another indication and another tribute to John Wayne himself, that the people from all over the world, not only did they come to buy, but they were willing to pay top dollar to be able to have something from his personal belongings.
You know, years ago, somebody did a survey. They took a picture of the Pope and a picture of John Wayne, not in America, but overseas. And they showed it to thousands of people, and most every one of them knew who John Wayne was. The other ones didn't know who the Pope was.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, you said October. Will you be soon going to California?
Yeah, October the 10th. We fly out there and do a show. Jake does a one-man show. John Wayne, the early years, the middle years, and the later years. It's a one-man show. The only part I play in the show is Jake has to change costumes. And when he slips back to change costumes, the MC introduces me as the man who knew John Wayne. And then I come out on the stage and I play trivia with the audience. I'll ask them, can anybody tell me the name of John Wayne's horse, for instance. No one's ever got it right, but the ones that answer, I give them a John Wayne dollar, and you think I gave them $100. And we do this for about 10 minutes, and then Jake goes back and changes, and it comes out for the
Now, are there a lot of people go every year?
Oh yeah, yeah. About 10,000 people go out to Lone Pine. A lot of them are people from Hollywood, old Hollywood people that were part of the film industry, and a lot of people that go out there, and before they leave, they make reservations for the following year because you can't even get a reservation out there, you know. It's a week-long thing, and we do a shootout in the desert. We do he does this one-man show, and in a theater he does it, and we sell it. It's a packed house every time he performs.
Okay, wow. You know, it's coming right near the end of the show. I want to say a couple. First, let me ask you, is there anything else you want to say to the viewers, or anything we haven't covered that you think is important?
Well, like I said several times, I thought John Wayne was a great American, a great patriot, and he had a magnetism that I can't explain. If he walked into a room with 100 people, all the oxygen would automatically go to him. And the only person that I can even think of that might have had that same personality, and I never met him, of course, would be JFK. Mm-hmm. He seemed to have the same type of person where people are drawn to him.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you for being our guest today, and it's certainly been a revelation to me, and I just want to commend you. I mean, an experience 60 years ago brought alive because of your love, and I got to say, you're a down-to-earth, good person just like John Wayne, and I wish you continued success in all you do with the museum, and have a wonderful trip to the coast and enjoy this year's John Wayne gathering.
And I thank you very much.
My pleasure. That'll do it for today's edition of Bowie News and Views. Bill Atkins, you've been amazing. Thank you, and we'll see you the next time. Bye for now.